The massive warship USS Dauntless hung silently in space, its dark hull reflecting little of the distant sun's light. Once the pride of the Earth fleet, the old ship now floated quietly in the orbital shipyard above New Terra Colony. Small maintenance. Drones buzzed around it like bees, their lights the only movement around the sleeping giant. Captain Alan Murphy stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching through the large window of the observation deck. His eyes, blue and sharp despite his 58 years, followed the approach of the alien shuttle. The shuttle's sleek design made it look like a predatory fish, all smooth lines and hidden power. "They're early," said Lieutenant Olivia Ross, standing at Murphy's side. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, her posture straight as a ruler. As the diplomatic officer assigned to the alien delegation, she had spent weeks preparing for this meeting. Murphy nodded, rubbing his chin where gray stubble was already growing despite his morning shave. "They're always early. It's a power move." The alien shuttle docked with a soft thud to the station. Murphy took a deep breath. This meeting would decide if humanity would gain a place in the Galactic Defense Alliance. After years of trying to prove themselves worthy, humans were finally getting their chance. "Remember," Ross said quietly as they walked toward the meeting room, "the Zelvans respect age, but only if it comes with power. The Luminari value efficiency above all else. And the Trisari think we're barely more than clever animals," Murphy finished for her. "I read your briefing, Lieutenant. Twice." The doors to the meeting room slid open. Inside, 3 very different alien species waited. Admiral Zorthal of the Zelvan Confederation stood tallest, nearly 7 feet of muscled reptilian form covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with his breathing. 4 eye stalks moved independently, scanning the room with military precision. Beside him, Ambassador Prisma of the Luminari seemed to be made of living crystal, her body constantly shifting colors like light through a prism. She had no visible mouth, communicating through patterns of light and sound that translator devices converted to human speech. The third alien, Representative Kree-KT of the Trisari, looked most insect-like, with a hard exoskeleton and compound, eyes that missed nothing. 4 arms were folded across his thorax in what humans had learned was a pose of impatience. "Captain Murphy," Admiral Zorthal said, his translator making his clicking speech into deep rumbling English. "We expected your fleet, Admiral." Murphy kept his face neutral. "Fleet Admiral Chen sends his regrets. Pirate activity in the Proxima sector required his attention. He gave me full authority to represent Earth forces." The Trisari representative made a sound like rattling pebbles, their version of a dismissive laugh. "Always spread too thin, you humans. This is why we question your readiness for the Alliance." Lieutenant Ross stepped forward smoothly. "That's precisely why we seek to join the Alliance, Representative Kree-KT. United defense benefits us all." Ambassador Prisma's crystalline form flickered with blue and green lights. "We should proceed with the inspection. Our time is limited." Murphy nodded. "Of course. If you'll follow me to the shuttle bay, we'll take you to see the Dauntless." As they walked through the station's corridors, Murphy noticed how other humans stopped and stared at the alien delegation. Most colonies rarely saw members of the advanced alien species. The Alliance had largely ignored humanity until the Scourge. Attacks 3 years ago proved that every world needed protection. Their shuttle was small but comfortable. As they approached the Dauntless, Murphy watched the aliens' reactions carefully. The massive warship, over a mile long from bow to stern, should have been impressive. Instead, he saw the aliens exchange glances that needed no translation. "This vessel appears outdated," Admiral Zorthal said as they docked with the Dauntless. His eye stalks contracted slightly, a sign of disappointment. "The Dauntless is 43 years old," Murphy admitted as they walked through the airlock. "But she's been upgraded continuously and served in 3 major conflicts. The ship's corridors were clean but showed signs of age. Paint had faded in places and some floor panels were worn from decades of boots walking the same paths. The lighting was functional rather than elegant, casting everything in a slightly yellow glow. Chief Engineer Frank Dawson met them at the main elevator. His hands were stained with engine grease and his uniform looked like he had slept in it, which Murphy knew he probably had. "Welcome aboard the finest warship humans ever built," Dawson said with genuine pride. Either he didn't notice or didn't care about the aliens' skeptical looks. Ambassador Prisma's form pulsed with orange light. "Our scans indicate minimal power output. Many systems appear to be offline." Dawson nodded, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Conservation mode, Ambassador. No sense burning fuel when we're docked. Everything can power up in minutes when needed." "Minutes?" Representative Kree KT's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Luminari. Vessels transition from dormant to battle-ready in 17 seconds. Zelvan ships in 23. Different design philosophy," Dawson said with a shrug. "Would you like to see the engine room first or the bridge?" Admiral Sorthal's scales darkened slightly. "The weapon systems." The tour continued through the massive ship. Murphy watched as the aliens' initial disdain slowly changed to confusion. The Dauntless was old, yes, but strange details kept catching their attention. In the main weapons control, the Zelvan admiral ran his clawed hand over a targeting system. "This design is unusual." "Custom-built," Dawson said proudly. "Conventional. Targeting systems couldn't handle the load when we upgraded the main guns 15 years ago. In engineering, the Trisari representative spent long minutes examining the reactor housing. Your containment appears overbuilt by at least 300%. "Safety first," Dawson replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. By the time they reached the bridge, Murphy could tell the aliens were puzzled. The Dauntless didn't match any standard human designs they knew of. "Your ship has been modified extensively," Ambassador Prisma observed, her crystalline form now pulsing with curious purple light. "Continuously improved," Murphy corrected gently. "Every mission taught us something new." Admiral Zorthal moved to the captain's chair and examined the control panels on the armrests. "These systems appear dormant, but our scans detect power signatures deep within the ship that we cannot identify." For the first time, Murphy hesitated. "The Dauntless has redundant systems. Some are classified." The Admiral's eye stalks focused directly on Murphy. "Classified even from potential allies?" Lieutenant Ross stepped in smoothly. "Admiral, as I'm sure you understand, every species maintains certain technological advantages in reserve. I'm sure the Zelvan fleet has systems you haven't shared with the Luminari or Trisari." The silence that followed confirmed her guess. "Perhaps we should continue to the mess hall," Murphy suggested. "Our chef has prepared examples of Earth cuisine, adapted for your biologies." As they left the bridge, none of them noticed the main console flicker briefly to life before darkening again. Deep within the ship systems, something was stirring. In the mess hall, the mood lightened somewhat. The chef had done excellent research, and even the normally stoic Trisari seemed to enjoy the protein structures created specifically for his biology. "You mentioned the Dauntless served in 3 conflicts," Ambassador Prisma said as they ate. "Which ones?" "The Mars Rebellion, the Titan Separatist Movement, and the Proxima border dispute," Murphy answered. Admiral Zorthal's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue color. "All internal human conflicts or minor border skirmishes. This vessel has never faced truly advanced opponents with modern weapons." Murphy set down his fork carefully. "That's true, Admiral. We haven't fought the kinds of wars your species have. We hope joining the Alliance means we never will." The Admiral's eye stalks swiveled toward Murphy. "Hope is not a strategy, Captain. The threats beyond your borders would destroy this vessel in moments." Before Murphy could answer, the ship's lights flickered, then stabilized. Engineer Dawson frowned and tapped his communicator. "Bridge, what was that power fluctuation?" A confused voice answered. "Unknown, sir. We're checking systems now." The aliens exchanged glances again. "Perhaps your dormant systems are less reliable than you claim," Representative Krikati said, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was their version of a smirk. Dawson's face flushed red. "The Dauntless has never failed in battle. Not once." "Because it has never been truly tested," the Trisari countered, as if responding to the insult. The ship's lights flickered again, longer this time. Deep within the hull, Monitoring systems recorded a power surge in sections that were supposedly inactive. The ship was listening. By the time the delegation returned to the observation deck, their verdict seemed clear. The aliens stood together, their body language expressing unified doubt. "Captain Murphy," Admiral Zorthal began formally, "we appreciate your hospitality. However, the Dauntless does not meet current Alliance standards for frontline vessels. At best, it might serve in a support capacity, well behind the defensive line." Murphy kept his expression neutral, though his jaw tightened slightly. "I understand. Admiral, what would you recommend for our application to the Alliance?" 2 weeks passed since the alien delegation's visit. The USS Dauntless remained in its orbital dock, seemingly unchanged and unwanted. Captain Alan Murphy spent most days handling paperwork in his small office on New Terra Colony's space station, filing reports about the failed inspection. Each night, he looked out his viewport at the old warship floating silently against the stars. "Still brooding?" asked Commander Susan Miller, as she entered his office without knocking. As the colony's defense coordinator, she was one of the few people who could get away with such informality. Murphy turned from the window. "Not brooding, thinking." Miller dropped into the chair across from his desk. Her short gray hair and weathered face showed her years of experience. "The Alliance delegation has moved on to the Jupiter colonies. Word is they're more impressed with the ships there. Newer, shinier toys," Murphy said with a slight frown. "They've forgotten that ships prove themselves in battle, not in showrooms." "Speaking of battles," Miller said, her voice turning serious, "our deep space sensors picked up something odd at the edge of the system. Might be nothing, but..." A sudden alarm cut her off. Red lights flashed across the office ceiling. Miller's communicator buzzed. She answered quickly, her face growing more concerned with each word. When she ended the call, she looked at Murphy, with grim determination. "We've got a situation. An object just entered the system at high speed. It's on a direct course for the colony, and it's not responding to hails." Murphy was already reaching for his uniform jacket. "Asteroid?" "Too controlled. It's adjusting course to compensate for our planet's movement. This is deliberate." They rushed to the colony's defense center, a large room filled with screens and busy personnel. Lieutenant Ross was already there, coordinating with the communications team. "What ships do we have available?" Murphy asked, scanning the tactical display. Miller shook her head. "The patrol ships are on the far side of the planet. Even at maximum burn, they can't get here in time." Murphy stared at the main screen, where a red dot showed the incoming object's trajectory. In just over 40 minutes, it would strike the main colony dome where 50,000 people lived. "What about the alien ships, the Alliance delegation?" Ross looked up from her console. "Already contacted them. They're doing training exercises in the outer system, too far away." Murphy's eyes drifted to another dot on the display, the orbital dock where the Dauntless waited. "What about the old girl?" he asked quietly. Miller followed his gaze. "The Dauntless? She hasn't left dock in months. Half her systems are powered down for maintenance. But she's there," Murphy said, his decision already made. "And she's all we've got." Within minutes, Murphy was aboard a fast shuttle heading for the Dauntless. As he approached, he opened a direct channel to the skeleton crew aboard the warship. "This is Captain Murphy. Emergency Protocol Delta 9. I need engines, weapons, and shields in 15 minutes. Chief Engineer Frank Dawson's voice came back instantly. "Captain, what's happening?" "We've got an incoming threat to the colony. The Dauntless is the only ship in position to intercept." A brief pause followed. "Understood, sir. We'll be ready." When Murphy arrived at the ship's airlock, he found Dawson waiting for him, along with Navigation Officer Patricia Woods and Weapons Specialist Jack Garcia. All three looked alert but concerned. "We've started emergency power-up," Dawson reported as they walked quickly toward the bridge. "Main reactor at 60% and climbing." The corridors of the Dauntless hummed with increasing energy. Lights, that had been dimmed for months now, glowed at full brightness. As they entered the bridge, Murphy was surprised to see how quickly the old ship was coming to life. "Status report," he ordered, settling into the captain's chair. "Main engines coming. Online." Woods reported from the navigation station. Her fingers flew across the controls. Maneuvering thrusters are already hot. Weapon systems powering up, Garcia added from his position. Point defense grid at 80%. Main guns charging. Murphy nodded, feeling the familiar vibration of the ship through the soles of his boots. Time to impact? 37 minutes until the object hits the colony, Woods answered. Murphy leaned forward. How long until we can break dock? Dawson checked his engineering panel. 5 minutes, maybe less. The ship is responding faster than expected. Murphy raised an eyebrow. Faster? Much faster, Dawson confirmed, looking puzzled. It's like she knows we're in a hurry. Murphy didn't have time to consider the implications. Bridge to dock control. This is Captain Murphy. Request emergency release. Authorization code Murphy Alpha 73. The dock controller's voice came back immediately. Authorization confirmed, Captain. Be advised, we show your system still cycling up. No time to wait, Murphy replied. We need to move now. There was a brief pause. Understood. Releasing docking clamps in 30 seconds. Murphy turned to his small crew. Battle stations. This isn't a drill. As the docking clamps released, Murphy felt the ship shudder slightly. Take us out nice and easy. Woods nodded, but before she could input the commands, the ship's thrusters fired on their own. The Dauntless slid smoothly away from the dock with a precision that surprised them all. Did you do that? Murphy asked, staring at his navigation officer. Woods shook her head, looking at her controls in confusion. No, sir. I was about to, but the ship. It moved on its own. Dawson frowned at his engineering panel. That's impossible. Unless what? Murphy demanded. Unless the system reboot triggered something in the ship's AI core, Dawson said slowly. But that doesn't make sense. The AI was mostly disabled during decommissioning. Murphy didn't have time to worry about it. We'll figure it out later. Right now, set intercept course for that incoming object. The Dauntless accelerated smoothly, its old engines pushing it forward with surprising power. On the main view screen, the incoming threat became clearer as their sensors locked on. I'm getting a better reading now, Garcia reported from weapons. It's definitely not a natural asteroid. There are metal components and energy signatures, some kind of guided weapon. Murphy frowned. Who would attack a civilian colony? Unknown, sir, Ross replied from the communication station. But we're picking up unusual radiation from the object. It's bigger than we thought, nearly 100 meters across. Murphy's expression hardened. Can we destroy it? Garcia studied his weapon displays. If we get close enough, yes, but the debris might still hit the colony. Then we don't destroy it, Murphy decided. We deflect it. Dawson looked up sharply. With what? We can't physically push something that size. We can with targeted kinetic strikes, Murphy explained. We hit it precisely on one side to change its trajectory. Garcia nodded slowly. It could work, but we'd need incredible targeting precision. Off by even a fraction, and we could make things worse. As if responding to their conversation, new information appeared on the tactical display. Firing solutions and impact calculations flowed across the screen, showing exactly where and how to strike the object. Did you do that? Murphy asked Garcia. The weapons officer shook his head. No, sir. The targeting computer just offered the solution. Dawson moved to a secondary console and began typing rapidly. Captain, I'm seeing unprecedented activity in the ship's systems. The old combat algorithms are activating, but they're operating at higher efficiency than anything in the specs. Is the ship helping us? Woods asked, her voice filled with wonder. Looks that way, Dawson replied. It's like she knows what we need. The Dauntless continued accelerating, closing the distance to the incoming threat. As they approached, Murphy made his decision. Follow the ship's firing solution, Mr. Garcia. Full confidence. Garcia nodded. Target locked. Ready to fire on your command. Murphy took a deep breath. Fire. The Dauntless's point defense weapons fired in a precisely coordinated sequence. Each shot hit the massive object exactly where the ship's systems had calculated, gradually pushing it onto a new trajectory that would miss the colony. On the view screen, they watched as the object slowly changed course. Tense minutes passed, as the ship automatically adjusted its firing pattern to compensate for the object's rotation and mass. "It's working," Woods reported finally. "New trajectory will miss the colony by over 300 kilometers. A cheer went up from the small crew, but Murphy remained focused. "Stay on it until it's past the planet. From the colony's defense center?" Commander Miller watched in amazement as the old warship performed with unexpected precision. "How are they doing that?" she asked, no one in particular. The Zelvin shuttle carrying Admiral Zorthal and his staff happened to be returning to the colony when the crisis began. Now they too watched from a safe distance as the human Relic demonstrated surprising effectiveness. "Interesting," the Admiral said, his scales shifting to a thoughtful blue color. "Perhaps there is more to this old vessel than we observed." Back aboard the Dauntless, Murphy finally allowed himself to relax as the threat passed safely beyond the planet. "Stand down from battle stations," he ordered. "Mr. Dawson, I want a full analysis of what just happened with the ship's systems." Dawson nodded, still looking at his displays in wonder. "Captain, this goes beyond any explanation I can think of. The ship performed better than she ever has in training exercises. It's almost like—" Woods hesitated. The USS Dauntless returned to a hero's welcome. Small maintenance ships zoomed around it, their lights blinking in patterns that looked almost like applause. On the colony's main communication channel, messages of thanks flooded in from grateful citizens. Captain Murphy stood on the bridge watching the activity through the main view screen. 3 days had passed since they had saved the colony from the mysterious weapon. During that time, Engineer Dawson had practically lived inside the ship's computer core, trying to understand what had happened. The bridge doors slid open and Dawson entered. Dark circles under his eyes showed how little he had slept. "Find anything?" Murphy asked. Dawson ran a hand through his messy hair. "Yes and no. The ship's systems are operating beyond their design specs. Way beyond." "How is that possible?" "I'm not sure," Dawson admitted. "It's like the ship learned from its experiences." Lieutenant Ross joined them, datapad in hand. "Captain Admiral Zorthal has requested to come aboard. He wants to see the Dauntless in active status." Murphy smiled slightly. "Curious now, is he? Tell the Admiral he's welcome aboard at 1400 hours. Before Ross could respond, all lights on, the bridge flashed red. A harsh alarm sounded. "What now?" Murphy moved quickly to his chair. Weapons Officer Garcia, who had been monitoring the colony's defense grid, looked up with wide eyes. "Multiple contacts just appeared at the edge of the system, sir. They came out of nowhere." "Show me," Murphy ordered. The main screen shifted to show sensor readings. Several large objects had appeared just beyond the orbit of the outermost planet. "Are they ships?" Murphy asked. Garcia nodded. "Definitely, but they match no known configuration in our database. The colony's long-range sensors are getting better readings now," Ross reported from communications. "At least 7 large vessels. They're not responding to standard hails." Murphy's decision was immediate. "Sound general quarters. I want the Dauntless at full combat readiness in 10 minutes. As the alarm sounded throughout the ship, Murphy opened a channel to the colony. "Commander Miller, we've got multiple unknown ships entering the system. Request any available support vessels to join us." Miller's voice came back tense. "Colony defense ships are already moving to intercept, Captain. The Zelvin and Luminary representatives are also deploying their escort vessels." "Good," Murphy said. "We'll take point position." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency as the Dauntless powered up. This time, the ship responded even faster than during the asteroid incident, almost as if it had been waiting for this moment. "All systems online," Dawson reported with surprise. "That took less than 4 minutes." Murphy nodded. "Take us out, Ms. Woods. Maximum safe speed." The Dauntless broke orbit smoothly, accelerating toward the edge of the system where the unknown ships had appeared. Behind them, 3 smaller colony defense vessels followed, along with the sleek Zelvan cruiser Honor of Ancestors and 2 luminary ships that glowed with internal light. Incoming transmission from the Zelvan flagship, Ross announced. Admiral. Zorthal's face appeared on a side screen. His scales had darkened to a deep purple, a sign of heightened alertness. Captain Murphy, he said. It appears we face a common threat. We will coordinate our response. Murphy nodded. Appreciated, Admiral. Any idea who they are? No, the Admiral replied. They matched no known species in Alliance records. As they approached the unknown ships, more details became clear. The vessels were dark, with odd angles that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. They moved in perfect formation, like hunting animals that had done this many times before. They're launching something, Garcia reported suddenly. Hundreds of small objects. On the tactical display, swarms of tiny dots appeared, spreading out from the larger ships. Analysis? Murphy asked. Some kind of drones, Garcia replied. Too small for manned fighters. They're moving fast. Very fast. Admiral Zorthal's voice came over the comm again. We have encountered similar attack patterns before. These appear to be autonomous combat drones, designed to overwhelm defenses through numbers. Recommendations? Murphy asked. Our ships will deploy countermeasures, the Admiral replied. Your vessel should fall back to a supporting position. These drones will target larger ships first. Murphy started to acknowledge when weapons officer Garcia interrupted. Sir, the ship is suggesting a different approach. Our tactical display just updated with a new defense pattern. Murphy looked at the main screen, where a complex formation had appeared. It showed the Dauntless moving forward, not back, with the Allied ships arranged in specific positions behind it. The ship came up with this? Murphy asked. Garcia nodded. Yes, sir. And according to these projections, it would be significantly more effective than a standard defense line. Murphy studied the pattern, then made his decision. Admiral, with respect, we have a different tactical approach to suggest. The Admiral's eye stalk stretched forward in surprise as Murphy sent him the Dauntless's battle plan. After a moment of silence, he responded, This formation is unorthodox, but the simulations show merit. We will follow your lead, Captain. The Allied ships rearranged themselves according to the Dauntless's plan. As they did, the enemy drones accelerated toward them, now just minutes, away from contact. All hands prepare for combat, Murphy announced. Mr. Garcia, weapons free, defend the formation. Garcia's hands moved across his console. Weapons ready, sir. But there's something else happening. The ship is opening compartments along the hull that aren't in any of the schematics. Dawson rushed to a secondary console. He's right, Captain. The Dauntless is deploying. I don't even know what these are. On the external cameras, they could see sections of the hull sliding open to reveal rows of small launchers. Sir, Woods called from navigation. The ship is requesting control of defensive systems. Murphy hesitated only briefly. Granted, let's see what she can do. The moment Woods entered the command, the Dauntless seemed to come fully alive. The newly revealed launchers fired in rapid sequence, deploying hundreds of small objects that spread out in front of the Allied fleet. What are those? Murphy asked. Some kind of counter-drones, Dawson replied, staring at his readings. They're forming a defensive screen. The Dauntless's counter-drones arranged themselves in a complex, geometric pattern that shifted constantly. When the enemy drones reached this defensive screen, something remarkable happened. Instead of a chaotic battle, the Dauntless's drones moved with perfect coordination, intercepting and neutralizing the attackers with surgical precision. On the Zelvan flagship, Admiral Zorthal watched with his 4 eyes widened in surprise. Impossible, he whispered. The coordination level required for this defense pattern exceeds any known system. The Dauntless continued to direct the battle, its weapons firing in patterns that seemed to anticipate the enemy's movements. The Allied ships, following the old warship's lead, added their firepower to specific points in the enemy formation, creating gaps that the Dauntless immediately exploited. Sir, Ross called out, excitement in her voice. I'm picking up a transmission signal from the enemy ships. Our systems are translating it. What are they saying? Murphy asked. Ross listened. Through her earpiece, her expression changing to concern. They're surprised, sir. I'm hearing phrases like Guardian Vessel and withdraw immediately. Murphy frowned. Guardian Vessel? They think we're someone else? I don't think so, sir, Ross replied. They're specifically referring to the Dauntless. It's like they recognize the ship somehow. As the battle continued, the enemy drones began to fall back. Their perfect formation broke apart as the Dauntless's countermeasures proved devastatingly effective. They're retreating, Garcia reported. Enemy drones returning to their carrier ships. Murphy should have felt relief, but something wasn't right. Why would they retreat? They still outnumber us. Communications officer Laura Bennett, who had joined the bridge crew during the crisis, spoke up from her station. Sir, I've been analyzing their transmission frequencies. There's something familiar about them. Familiar how? Murphy asked. They use modulation patterns similar to signals recorded during the Rigelian conflict, 60 years ago. Murphy stared at her. That's impossible. The Rigelian conflict was before first contact with any alien species. It was an internal human matter. Yes, sir, Bennett agreed, which makes this very strange. Before they could discuss it further, the enemy ships began to move. 3 of the largest vessels broke formation, heading directly toward the Allied fleet. They're charging weapons, Garcia warned. Energy readings are off the charts. Evasive maneuvers, Murphy ordered. The Dauntless responded instantly, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of turning away, the ship accelerated toward the approaching enemy vessels. What's happening? Murphy demanded as he felt the ship surging forward. The ship is overriding manual control, Woods reported, her hands hovering uselessly above her console. It's plotting an intercept course. Dawson. Murphy turned to his engineer. Can you take back control? Dawson was already trying, his fingers flying across his panel. Negative, sir. It's like the ship is locked into some kind of pre-programmed response. On the main view screen, text suddenly appeared. Protocol Lazarus fully activated. Guardian Defense, systems online. What the hell is Protocol Lazarus? Murphy asked. Captain Murphy gripped the arms of his command chair as the Dauntless moved through space with impossible grace. The ship was no longer just responding to commands. It was leading the battle. Status report, Murphy called out, trying to maintain some semblance of normal operations. All weapon systems operating at 200% of rated capacity, Garcia reported from his station, disbelief clear in his voice. The ship is targeting with precision I've never seen before. Hull integrity at 100% despite direct hits, Dawson added. Those weren't standard shields that activated. There's some kind of energy dispersion field not listed in any technical manual. On the main view screen, the battle unfolded with frightening intensity. The enemy ships had recovered from their initial surprise and were now concentrating their fire on the Dauntless. Dark energy beams and plasma weapons struck the human vessel, repeatedly, only to be absorbed or deflected by its mysterious defenses. Sir, Communications Officer Bennett called out, I'm picking up transmissions between the enemy vessels. I think I've broken part of their language code. What are they saying? Murphy asked. Bennett's face was pale. They're saying the Guardian has awakened. Initiate Harvest Protocol immediately. Harvest Protocol? Woods asked from navigation. What does that mean? As if answering her question, the 2 largest enemy ships suddenly broke away from the battle. They accelerated rapidly toward New Terra Colony. They're going for the colony, Ross shouted. Their weapons are charging. Murphy opened a channel to the Allied ships. Admiral Sorthal, 2 enemy vessels are moving toward the colony. Can your ships intercept? The Admiral's reply was immediate. We are engaged with the remaining enemy ships. We cannot disengage in time. Murphy turned to Woods. Set intercept course. Before he could finish, the Dauntless had already changed direction, accelerating faster than should have been possible for a ship its size. The inertial dampeners strained to compensate, causing everyone on the bridge to feel the pressure of the sudden movement. The ship is calculating the fastest intercept path, Woods reported, her hands moving across controls that were now responding to her touch again. We'll reach them before they get to the colony, but only just. On the colony itself, Commander Miller watched the tactical display with growing horror. 2 massive enemy ships were approaching rapidly, while the Dauntless raced to intercept them. Activate all defensive measures, she ordered, and begin emergency evacuation to the underground shelters. Back on the Dauntless, Murphy watched as they closed the distance to the enemy ships. They were still too far away to prevent the enemy from firing on the colony. We need more speed, he said, mostly to himself. As if hearing him, new information appeared on the main screen. Emergency propulsion system available. Caution. Structural stress will exceed normal parameters. What's an emergency propulsion system? Murphy asked Dawson. The engineer shook his head. There's nothing like that in the specs, but at this point I'm not surprised by anything this ship is hiding. Murphy made his decision. Activate it. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A new sound filled the ship, a deep resonant hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The stars on the view screen blurred as the Dauntless leaped forward with impossible speed. We're exceeding our maximum rated velocity by 300%, Woods reported in awe. Hull stress is increasing but still within safe limits. Within seconds they had closed the distance to the enemy ships. One of the vessels had already fired a massive energy weapon toward the colony. Without any command from the crew, the Dauntless positioned itself directly in the path of the energy beam. The mysterious shields flared brightly as they absorbed the full force of the attack. Shield energy at maximum, Dawson called out. But they're holding. The Dauntless's weapons fired in response. Not the standard energy beams they had seen before, but something new. A swirling vortex of energy erupted from previously hidden ports along the ship's spine, connecting with the enemy vessel and causing visible damage to its hull. What was that? Murphy asked. I have no idea, Dawson admitted. The energy readings don't match anything in our database. The damaged enemy ship turned its attention away from the colony, focusing all its weapons on the Dauntless. Its companion vessel did the same, clearly recognizing the human ship as the greater threat. Under the concentrated attack, even the Dauntless's mysterious shields began to strain. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as the ship absorbed, hit after hit. Shields at 60% and falling, Dawson reported. Whatever these defenses are, they have limits. Murphy looked at the tactical display. The Allied ships were still engaged with the other enemy vessels far behind them. The Dauntless stood alone between the colony and destruction. Options? He asked. Garcia studied his weapons console. Sir, the ship is suggesting a tactic. It wants to channel the energy from their attacks back at them. That's not possible, Dawson said. You can't just redirect that much energy. New text appeared on the main screen. Resonance mirror system. Available. Requires full power diversion. What happens if we try it? Murphy asked. According to these readings, Garcia replied, all power would be diverted to this resonance mirror system. Engines, life support, everything would temporarily shut down. We'd be dead in space for at least 30 seconds after use. Murphy considered their options. 30 seconds was an eternity in a space battle, but the colony had millions of innocent people. Do it, he ordered. The lights on the bridge dimmed as power flowed away from all systems. The Dauntless seemed to hold its breath as the enemy ships fired another massive barrage. This time, instead of absorbing the attack, the ship's shields changed. They became reflective, gathering the energy from the enemy weapons and focusing it into a single point at the front of the vessel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a silent flash that lit up space like a newborn star, the collected energy burst outward in a concentrated beam that struck both enemy ships simultaneously. The effect was devastating. The enemy vessel's shields collapsed instantly, and their hulls cracked under the force of their own reflected energy. Secondary explosions rippled across their surfaces as internal systems failed. As promised, the Dauntless went dark. All systems except for emergency life support shut down. The ship drifted silently, vulnerable. Power status? Murphy asked in the dim red emergency lighting. All systems offline, Dawson reported. Reboot sequence has begun, but it'll take at least 25 more seconds. On the view screen, they could see the damaged enemy ships were still operational, though crippled. One of them slowly turned toward the defenseless Dauntless, weapons charging for what could be a final blow. Brace for impact, Murphy ordered. Before the enemy could fire, streaks of energy cut through space as the Allied ships finally arrived. The Zelvin and Luminary vessels, having defeated the other enemy ships, now focused their fire on the remaining threats. Under this combined assault, the enemy vessels finally turned away, accelerating out of the system with their surviving comrades. Slowly, power returned to the Dauntless. Systems came back online one by one until the ship was fully operational again. "They're retreating," Garcia confirmed, watching the tactical display. "All enemy ships are leaving the system." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Murphy remained focused. "Damage report?" "Minor structural damage to the outer hull," Dawson replied. "But otherwise, we're intact." "It's incredible." Admiral Sorthal's face appeared on the communication screen. His scales had shifted to a golden color that none of the humans had seen before. "Captain Murphy," he said, his voice solemn. "The Alliance owes you and your vessel a debt of gratitude. Your actions saved countless lives today." Murphy nodded. "Thank you, Admiral. But I think most of the credit belongs to the Dauntless herself." After the battle, the Dauntless returned to orbit around New Terra Colony. News of its incredible performance spread quickly through human space and to every Alliance world. The ship that aliens had scoffed at was now the subject of intense interest. 3 days later, Murphy sat in the colony's main conference room with Admiral Zorthal, Ambassador Prisma, and Representative Creekate. Commander Miller and Engineer Dawson were also present. "Our technicians have analyzed the sensor readings from the battle," Admiral Zorthal said. "The capabilities demonstrated by the Dauntless exceed anything seen in known space." Ambassador, Prisma's crystalline form pulsed with curious colors. "The question remains, how did such technology come to be in an apparently outdated human vessel?" All eyes turned to Murphy and Dawson. "We've been asking ourselves the same question," Murphy admitted. "After the battle, we gained access to previously locked sections of the ship's database." Dawson activated a display showing technical schematics. "The Dauntless isn't just any warship. It was the first and only ship of a special project called Guardian. What we've discovered," Murphy continued, "is that 43 years ago, Earth encountered something that was covered up. The official record calls it the Rigelian conflict, a minor skirmish between human colonies. The truth was very different. Earth had its first contact with the same species we just fought," Dawson explained. "They called themselves Harvesters and attacked a research outpost. The encounter was brief but devastating." Murphy nodded.